You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the breach, dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections in mind. Venom has finally hit theaters after many false starts since the events of 2007's Spider-Man 3. This film is directed by Ruben Fleischer, who is probably best known for Zombieland, and it stars Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, a journalist who has a lot of has really down on his luck by his own making, and through a series of circumstances, the company he's investigating, who has trapped alien symbiote life forms in their San Francisco facility, Eddie Brock ends up contracting one of these symbiotes, who turns out to be Venom. And they form an unlikely partnership, and it is up to Eddie Brock to stop this company from getting more of these life forms and wreaking havoc on the city of San Francisco and indeed the world. Now, this video review will contain spoilers of Venom as well as certain other films and TV series. I'll put a full list in the description below, and if you have not seen Venom yet or any of the films and TV shows listed below and want to wait until you have, stop the video at this point and come back later. Or if you want to see my final thoughts on Venom without spoilers or any of the analysis, skip to this point in the video and proceed from there. Both these things in mind though, let's begin. So really the main reason why Venom works as a movie is the dynamic between Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote, who has a voice of its own, and they communicate with each other, they're bargaining with each other in order to influence each other and take control of Eddie's body, and when this Venom symbiote takes over and creates its own gooey outer skin, that dynamic is really what the movie's all about. And the way this dynamic is perpetuated, there are certain things that you've seen before this kind of dynamic in the past. For instance, the fact that Venom's species, we don't get an exact name for him, but his species is coming to Earth to essentially destroy the entire world and eat everyone on the planet. And because Venom has taken over Eddie Brock's body, he basically says that if Eddie cooperates with Venom, he may end up living. So that kind of reminded me of the relationship between Seymour and the Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, in which that was also the Audrey 2's an alien life form who came to eat everything, and Seymour is basically his unwilling or reluctant helper in that regard. Also, there are many scenes in Venom where Eddie Brock's outer appearance is just being regular Tom Hardy as he's walking down the street, but you can hear him carrying on a conversation between him talking out loud and him hearing Venom speak to him through his mind, but with the audience hear him, so we get to hear that conversation go out. This reminded me a lot of the episode of Stargate Atlantis from season 2 called Duet, in which Dr. McKay and a marine officer named Cadman end up in McKay's body, but Cadman's consciousness is in McKay's head, and they carry on conversations with each other, and at one point Cadman even takes control of McKay's body in order to assert her control over it, and there's a inner battle going on in that front. So there's one thing that you can see there. However, probably the most famous example of this sort of inner monologue between two characters probably goes way back to the character of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, in which Dr. Jekyll is the human who is somewhat mild-mannered, he doesn't want to hurt anyone, but he's got some personal issues, he's got an ego for sure, but then he creates the alternate ego of Mr. Hyde, who can take over, and he's basically a monster at that point, and he he ends up destroying things and causing chaos, and there's a inner conflict in there. And the film equivalent of this, probably more literal than the book, or more exaggerated than the book, I should say, was from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, in which the character of Hyde is a gigantic, like almost Hulk monster at that point. And they often, he and Jekyll often communicate with each other with either by talking to they can sometimes hear each other in their minds, but they also like see off reflective materials to see the other persona, as seen in the in Venom, where Eddie first sees the Venom symbiote's personality in the reflection of a car window, and he's able to talk to him in that manner. And going off of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, there's another comparison to be made with the main villain of Venom, namely the other symbiote named Riot, who is the leader of this squad of alien symbiotes, who is like the vanguard of millions of symbiotes who are already out there and coming towards Earth, and he has to go back up to space and get them, but Venom doesn't want that to happen because he's basically taken a liking to Eddie and to Earth, and he doesn't, and in his words, he's also a loser among his people, just like Eddie is, and they have Venom and Riot have to fight each other in order to save the world. But Riot is slightly larger than Venom. He's a little more powerful than Venom, and this is much like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where in the climax, Hyde has to he fights basically a mirror version of Hyde, where one of the Moriarty soldiers takes the Hyde formula way too much and becomes an even more powerful version of the Hyde monster, and they have to fight each other at that point. So, another comparison to be made there. And finally, just some general comparisons. This film really focuses on the fact that there are life forms out there that we want to bring back to Earth, but they're not the traditional sci-fi aliens, and they can be very, very indifferent, or they can enter the body as well and interact with them. This is somewhat similar to the Andromeda Strain, where the goal of that book was the scientists send out satellites into low Earth orbit in order to find extraterrestrial organisms, and namely microscopic organisms, and when they come to Earth, these organisms enter the body and cause chaos and death and destruction along the way. However, another comparison to be made, while more loose comparison, it is really understandable now, seeing Venom, looking back, why people thought at the time that the 2017 film Life with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal was theoretically a backdoor prequel to Venom, because that is another instance where an unusual alien life form is brought in to Earth, and it can go places. It doesn't look like a regular humanoid. It can manifest in different ways. It can climb in through the ducts, much like Venom did in the hospital scene. And yeah, it's just, it's a loose connection with life in Venom, but you can see why people thought at the time that might be the case. So those are my main connections with Venom. Now the question is Venom worth seeing in the theaters? I would say yes, but you have to, something to keep in mind going into it is that the marketing did not do a good job with representing this film, because the main reason people wanted to have a Venom movie, and especially an R-rated Venom movie, was because Venom, he looks like a gigantic monster, and he is, and they wanted to see him bite off heads and kill and eat and wreak havoc and be like almost a horror movie in that regard. And that's kind of what the trailers were going for with their tone. And it was only in the later trailers that you could see some of the weird humor going on, especially the turd in the wind scene, which I'm pretty sure is going to be infamous from this movie on. But this really is more of a character study and almost a buddy comedy in a way, where it does follow the same basic plot of a comic book where Venom is a symbiote from space and Eddie Brock's a journalist down on his luck, and they find each other, and then there are a lot of violent scenes with Venom like killing people, and he does bite some heads off, though we don't actually see him bite the heads off. It kind of cuts away. So if you were looking for hardcore gore from that front, you're going to be disappointed. But honestly, the humor is really on point. And while Sony might have been trying to go for a more like Deadpool type feel, like more of a comedy route rather than a horror route, I think it does go that route. It doesn't go full Deadpool, obviously, but the humor is almost more of a buddy comedy in that respect. A superhero buddy comedy. And that wasn't what I was expecting, but it actually kind of worked. I really liked the Eddie and Venom dynamic that happened, that they got along, even though they don't spend all that much time. It really, he only really gets the Venom symbiote in like probably around the halfway point, honestly. And they really don't start getting like a gel together towards the end. But then that second half is where things really get cool, because the Venom symbiote, he goes like all over the place, and you can see so many ways that they can use the Venom symbiote to different situations, and that really worked. It really worked. It was awesome. But if I had, however, if you're going to be turned off by some things, there are some things to look out for. This is a very inconsistent movie. There are scenes where it's trying to go for heavy drama, but it then interrupts it with really a bit untimed joke, or like it. And the character development is really, really rushed. I mean, my gosh, like things happen for really no reason. Like people change their minds on a dime, pretty much. Like, I won't give it away, but there's one thing that happens with Venom and someone in Eddie's life that once you see it happen, it's cool in the moment, but then you think back on it, it's like, wait, how did that conversation go down? And I kind of wanted to see that, actually, because yeah, there's just so much that happens that doesn't get explained, and the villain Riot is really one-dimensional. He's really rushed, and the main human antagonist, the head of the Life Corporation, Life Foundation, I should say, he is really one note, and they're trying to go for he's a mad scientist who's trying to help people but can't see past the atrocities he's committing, and it kind of works, but then it kind of stalls out, and then he becomes really one-dimensional, and then the ending is just, again, no spoilers in this section, but it doesn't make sense how it came about the way it did. Or, I mean, you kind of know what's going to happen, but then it's like, how? Can we at least see how that happened? Explain at all? No? Okay. So there's a bit of suspension of disbelief in there, and if you're not able to make that leap, you're probably going to not enjoy it as much. But personally, for me, I really enjoyed this film. I think I read a review somewhere that said that this movie is kind of a 2000s era superhero film, and while it's not the same caliber as like an Avengers Infinity War or a Winter Soldier route, it honestly, it's not bad. I mean, the early 2000s era superhero films weren't bad either when they did them right, and this is one that did it right. It's just a little bit behind the times in what makes a superhero movie in this definition. So if that's what you're looking for, definitely go check this out. So there you have it. There is my review of Venom. I thank you so much for sticking around to the end. Or if you haven't seen Venom yet, I invite you to come back when you have to look at the connections. And if you saw other ones that I may have missed, please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, be sure to look for my next reviews. I will be reviewing Daredevil Season 3 coming out in the next couple weeks. So be sure to look for that. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And just remember, there's nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.